My words can kill. Whatever I say comes true. When I was 8, my cruel adoptive father kicked me into an icy river. I glared at him and said furiously, "You'll drown if you go into water." The next day, he drowned in a stinking ditch where the water barely reached his knees. After realizing I could really kill people, I was so scared, I stopped talking and became a mute. A year ago, I was taken back to the Shaw family. In order to stay with the family that I'd finally found after all these years, I absolutely refused to speak. But one day, after Jackie Shaw took a sip of the drink I brought him, he suddenly convulsed and fell to the floor, his face turning purple. A maid screamed in terror, "There's peanut powder in the drink." Before I could even say anything, might win, Sister Violet kicked the coffee table, grabbed my hair, and pressed me down hard onto the broken glass shards. "You know Jackie is severely allergic to peanuts. How could you poison him?" After Mom gave Jackie an emergency injection, she turned around and slapped me hard. "I can't believe I gave birth to a malicious monster like you." Dad's face was ashen. He splashed boiling tea all over me. "You heartless, vicious, and great. I can't believe you tried to kill Jackie out of jealousy." Boiling water mixed with blood dripped down my face, and I clenched my teeth tightly. They had no idea that if I truly wanted him dead, I wouldn't even need to poison him. I just had to speak. Like this. I slowly looked up at Jackie, and my lips moved. It wasn't me. I opened my mouth to speak, but only a hoarse sound emerged. Since returning to the Shaw family a year ago, I was very careful not to say anything, fearing that one wrong word would hurt this precious family I'd finally found. I still remember the day I returned home. Dad cooked barbecue ribs for me. Mom held my hand, promising I would never suffer again. My sister, who now seemed to want to crush my bones, once fought tooth and nail against bullies who mocked me at school. That was the only ray of light I clung to in the endless darkness of my life. Therefore, I gritted my teeth and willingly became invisible. But now that light had turned into a blade that cut deep into my heart. "You still won't admit it. You were the only one who went into the kitchen. If it wasn't you who poisoned him, who else could it be?" Violet bellowed as she bent down, grabbed the pure silver amulet I wore on my neck, and yanked it off forcefully. The silver chain left a bloody mark on my neck. The amulet was something Mom had begged for from a fortune teller up in the mountains. Last year, on my birthday, she had to climb 399 steps to get there. She said the amulet was a good minus luck charm that would keep me safe. "Don't touch my amulet." I struggled to grab it back. Violet kicked me hard in the chest, knocking me over. She turned and shoved the amulet into Jackie's hands, who had recovered a little by now. "Letting you wear this is an insult to the gods. Only a pure, innocent boy like Jackie deserves to wear it." Weakly leaning in Mom's embrace, Jackie cried bitterly, yet he tightly held on to the amulet that was originally mine. "Don't blame Henry." Cough, cough. "He suffered a lot over the years. So it's understandable if he feels jealous. If it makes him feel better, I wouldn't mind giving up my life." The more Jackie spoke, the more disgusted my parents looked at me. Mom hugged Jackie tightly while glaring at me angrily. "See? Your little brother is defending you even though he almost died and you still wouldn't admit your mistake. Jackie has always been a kind boy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. There's no way he would risk his life to frame you." Dad pointed at the door with a cold face. "Throw him into the storeroom in the backyard. Lock him up for 3 days so that he'll learn. We don't tolerate malice in this family." I was locked in a storeroom with no windows. It was freezing and I only had a wet shirt on. Outside, just beyond the wall, the living room was brightly lit. The comforting voice of the family doctor and Mom's scared sobs pierced my ears like poison needles. Late at night, the locked storeroom door clicked open. Jackie, dressed in a thick down jacket and holding a flashlight, looked down at me, who was stiff from the cold. "Geez, Henry, why are you lying on the floor like a stray dog?" He had completely shed his weak and pitiful facade from earlier, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Do you want to know who put the peanut powder in the drink?" He squatted down, shining the flashlight directly into my eyes. "It was me. Just wanted to see who's more important to Dad, Mom, and Violet. You, their biological son and brother, or me, who is adopted. Guess what? Even though you're related by blood in their eyes, you're not even fit to carry my shoes." My lips were purple from the cold. I glared at him, not saying a word. The last shred of hope I had for the Shaw family crumbled into dust. Seeing I wasn't speaking, Jackie lost interest in taunting me. He chuckled coldly and pulled out a sharp fruit knife from his pocket. "Since you won't talk, let's do something more interesting. If Mom and Dad think you stabbed me in anger, would they throw you in jail or kill you on the spot?" He raised the knife and cut a deep gash on his arm without hesitation. The moment the blood gushed out, he threw the bloody knife next to me and let out a horrifying scream. "Ah. Henry, what are you doing?" "I only came to check on you." "Why are you trying to kill me?" As soon as he screamed, the storeroom door was kicked open with a bang. Violet rushed in, followed by my parents. They were met with a gruesome sight. There was blood everywhere and Jackie was trembling on the floor. "Jackie!" Violet cried out. She frantically rushed over to cover his wound with her coat, tears welling up in her eyes. Mom saw the knife at my feet and screamed. She ran to me and kicked me hard on the chest. "You animal. You really are an animal. Jackie secretly came to check on you even though he's injured, but you stabbed him." The kick knocked me against the wall, and my vision turned dark. I struggled to breathe. Jackie leaned against Violet, gasping in pain, but still desperately held on to Mom's hand. "Mom, don't hit Henry. It's my fault for coming here, even though I knew he hated me." Those words added more fuel to the fire. Dad's face turned livid with rage, and his hand trembled violently as he pointed at me, cruel and unrepentant. You're completely hopeless. Why do we bring back a cold-blooded monster like you? Violet helped Jackie up, and before leaving, she looked at me with disgust, as if I were trash. Jackie kindly came to check on you, but you repaid his kindness with evil. You're beyond saving. They hurried away, surrounding Jackie, their faces filled with grief. The storeroom door was slammed shut and locked again. 3 days later, the door finally opened. Bodyguards dragged me out like I was a corpse and threw me into the brightly lit mansion living room. Today, the Shaw family was holding a party to celebrate Jackie's recovery, and the living room was filled with our relatives. Dad stood at the top of the stairs, pointing at me on the floor as he loudly declared to everyone, "Dear relatives, please be my witness. This boy our Shaw family brought back is completely evil to snatch the family fortune. Not only did he poison Jackie with peanut powder, he even tried to stab Jackie in the storeroom a few days ago." Mom held Jackie's arm, which was wrapped in thick bandages, her eyes swelling with tears. If Violet hadn't taken swift actions, Jackie might have lost his life. We cannot keep such a venomous snake in the house. The guests looked disgusted, pointing at me and whispering, "That's what happens when you grow up poor. It's too late to change him. How could he do that to Jackie? Jackie is such a good kid. Call the cops on him." Violet stepped on my shoulder and flung an agreement to sever ties onto my face. In front of everyone. "Confess your wrongdoings and apologize to Jackie on your knees. After you sign, scram back to the countryside where you came from. Not a penny of the Shaw family's money will you take with you." I looked up at them, shaking violently from the cold. "I told you I didn't poison him." My voice was hoarse and cracked like a worn-out fellow. "He poisoned Jackie." Suddenly, a young maid burst out from the crowd. It was the maid who accused me that day. But at that moment, Mary, the maid who usually cleaned the backyard, pushed through the crowd and got on her knees. "Henry didn't do it. That day I was cleaning outside the kitchen, and I saw Jackie pour a pack of powder into the drink with my own eyes." The hall instantly fell silent. Jackie's face hardened for a moment, but he quickly hid behind Mom, shivering again. Fury flashed in Violet's eyes. She ran over and kicked Mary hard in the chest. Mary, who was quite old, fell to the floor and couldn't get up for a while, blood trickling from her mouth. "Old hag. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? How much did Henry bribe you to accuse Jackie?" Dad's expression darkened as he waved the bodyguards over. "You insolent dog. Drag her to the courtyard and give her a good beating. After that, throw her out." Several strong men went up to Mary, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out. She screamed in pain, only to receive punches and kicks in response. Mary was beaten bloody for speaking up for me and telling the truth. Seeing that, I could no longer keep the blood in my chest down. And I coughed it up. In order to stay in this so-called family, I pretended to be mute, enduring everything silently. An innocent person was trampled on to protect a liar. "Stop hitting her." I struggled to get up, but Jackie was quicker. He knelt on the floor, sobbing. "Dad, Mom, don't be angry. It's all my fault. Henry has gone through a lot. So it's only natural for him to hate me. Mary only lied for him out of pity. Please take back the agreement. I'll move out of the mansion tomorrow and give the position back to Henry. As long as he doesn't poison me again." Mom was heartbroken. She glared at me fiercely. "Look at your brother. Look how much he's willing to sacrifice for you." Violet violently grabbed my collar, lifted me up, and threw me hard onto the coffee table. The edge of the glass table hit my forehead, and warm blood trickled into my eyes. "Will you sign it or not? If you won't, I'll break your hands." Her eyes were filled with violence. Dad looked down at me coldly, as if I were his enemy. "I don't have a son like you. If you don't confess your crimes, you're not leaving through that door." Pain and coldness spread all over my body. Staring at my 3 blood relatives, my heart was completely numb. They didn't care about the truth. They were already convinced I was guilty. I lowered my gaze, slowly swallowed the blood in my mouth, and grinned. I lifted my head, my gaze passing over Violet and landing on Jackie's tear-stained, smug face. "Fine. I confess." I unleashed my voice, and it was clear. I put the peanut powder in the drink and stabbed Jackie in the storeroom. A trace of undisguised joy flickered in Jackie's eyes. Violet snorted. "Finally, you admit it. Now apologize to Jackie. On your knees." I ignored her. She had no idea that if I truly wanted him dead, I wouldn't even need to poison him. I just had to speak. Like this. I slowly looked up at Jackie, and my lips moved. Jackie's triumphant smile lingered on his face. He thought I was finally broken. He thought I was about to beg. Instead, I looked him in the eyes and spoke the first true sentence I had willingly said in years. "You wanted this confession so badly." My cracked voice echoed through the silent hall. "So I'll give you something else." Jackie's smile faltered. "You'll never be able to lie again." Silence. Nothing happened. A second passed. Then another. Violet burst into laughter. "What? Is that supposed to scare us?" The guests exchanged puzzled looks. Jackie himself relaxed and sneered. "Henry, you've finally gone crazy." He took one smug step forward. "I accept." His mouth froze. His pupils shrank. "No." His lips moved on their own. I mixed the peanut powder. The room froze. Jackie's face instantly turned white. He clamped both hands over his mouth. "No. No. I wanted everyone to hate Henry." The words forced themselves out. I poured the peanut powder into the coffee. His entire body trembled violently. I cut my own arm. I left the knife beside Henry. I knew Mom and Dad would believe me. He desperately slapped himself across the face. "Stop. Stop talking." But his own mouth ignored him. I've lied for years. I cried on purpose. I knew Violet would beat anyone who defended Henry. I enjoyed watching it. Every sentence was like a hammer. The entire mansion fell deathly silent. Mary, who had been dragged into the courtyard, stared with swollen eyes. Dad's face slowly lost all color. Mom looked as though someone had ripped the ground from beneath her. Violet barked. Jackie. What are you saying? I poisoned myself because I knew you idiots would never doubt me. The words came out without pause. I only needed to cry. You all did the rest. His eyes filled with panic. He dug his fingernails into his own throat until blood appeared. Still. I've stolen money from Mom. I deleted Henry's school acceptance email. I spread rumors that he bullied classmates. I hid Grandma's jade bracelet and blamed Henry. I've been doing it ever since he came home. One confession after another. Each one more horrifying than the last. An elderly uncle suddenly stood. Wait. He stared at Jackie. The missing jade bracelet. Jackie's mouth answered immediately. It's buried under the rose bushes behind the greenhouse. A dozen relatives rushed outside. Within minutes someone shouted. I found it. The old jade bracelet, wrapped in a plastic bag, was held high for everyone to see. The hall exploded. So Mary was telling the truth? My God. We all misunderstood Henry. Mom stumbled backward. Her legs gave out beneath her. No. No. She looked at me. Then at Jackie. Then back again. Her lips trembled so violently she couldn't finish the sentence. Dad slowly turned toward Jackie. His fist shook. You. Jackie dropped to his knees. His mouth still wouldn't stop. I never loved any of you. I loved your money. I loved being the favorite. I wanted Henry gone. I planned to frame him until he either killed himself or disappeared. The confession landed like thunder. Even Violet took an unconscious step back. No. Jackie wouldn't. Her voice sounded strangely small. I pretended to protect Henry before. Jackie's mouth continued. But after everyone loved me more, I decided he had to disappear. I knew Violet had a violent temper. So I kept praising her. It made manipulating her easier. Violet's entire body stiffened. Her breathing became ragged. You. I knew she'd hit Henry before asking questions. I laughed every time. For the first time since I had entered this house. Violet looked sick. Not angry. Not cold. Sick. She slowly remembered every bruise she'd left on me. Every slap. Every kick. Every word. Monster. Animal. Beyond saving. She had said them all. Her knees suddenly buckled. Henry. She whispered my name like she'd forgotten how. I didn't answer. I simply watched. There wasn't satisfaction. There wasn't forgiveness. There was only emptiness. The people I had spent a year desperately trying to love had destroyed that feeling long before today. Dad suddenly strode toward Jackie. His face twisted with fury. You little. Don't. My voice stopped him. Everyone looked at me. It was only one word. Yet Dad froze as if nailed to the floor. I sighed softly. You don't get to play father now. His expression cracked. Henry. I spent a year begging silently for someone to believe me. I never even asked you to love me more. I only wanted one person to ask what really happened. No one spoke. I was 8 when I learned my words could kill. I became mute because I was terrified of hurting people. I looked around the room. I stayed silent because I thought this family was worth protecting. A bitter smile tugged at my lips. I was wrong. The words were quiet. But they cut deeper than shouting ever could. Mom burst into tears. She crawled toward me on trembling knees. Henry. I'm sorry. She reached for my hand. I calmly stepped back. Her fingers closed on empty air. That hurt her more than any curse ever could. Outside, the sound of police sirens slowly approached. One of the relatives had quietly called them after Jackie's involuntary confession. Jackie heard them too. His terrified eyes darted toward the front door. No. I don't want to go to prison. His own mouth betrayed him again. I deserve prison. I've committed fraud. I forged medical records. I even bribed the first maid to accuse Henry. The young maid who had first blamed me collapsed to the floor, sobbing. I was threatened. The truth, buried for a year, finally surfaced piece by piece. And this time? No one could stop it. The police grabbed Jackie's arms. No. Let go of me. I framed Henry. I poisoned myself. I deserve prison. His own mouth kept spitting out confession after confession. The guests backed away from him in horror, as though they were looking at a demon. Mom suddenly screamed. No. She staggered toward Jackie, grabbing his shoulders with trembling hands. Tell me this isn't true. Jackie desperately shook his head. It isn't. It is. I hated Henry from the day he came home. I wished he had died before being found. Mom's hand slipped from his shoulders. She stared at the son she had protected with her life. Every word coming from his mouth was like a knife twisting through her heart. No. You've always loved me more than him. I knew exactly how to make you hate him. I only had to cry. I only had to pretend to be scared. You never once asked Henry whether he was innocent. Mom's legs gave out. She collapsed onto the marble floor. Images flooded her mind. Henry standing outside in the rain because she believed he'd broken a vase. Henry silently kneeling while Violet whipped him with a belt. Henry bleeding after she'd thrown boiling tea into his face. Not once. Not once had she asked him. Henry. She turned toward him. Her tears streamed uncontrollably. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Henry looked at her. His eyes were already red. So now you believe me? His voice trembled violently. I begged you. I looked at you every single day. I thought. His throat tightened. I thought eventually. You'd look at me the way you looked at him. I thought if I behaved. If I stayed quiet. If I endured everything. You'd love me again. His voice finally broke. But every time something happened. You chose him. Every single time. He laughed through his tears. Do you know what I kept telling myself? I kept saying. They're my family. They're just mistaken. Tomorrow they'll understand. But tomorrow never came. Mom burst into uncontrollable sobs. She crawled toward him on her knees. Henry instinctively stepped back. Not because he hated her. Because for the first time. He was afraid of her. That tiny movement shattered her completely. She covered her mouth and screamed. The sound echoed through the entire mansion. Violet's breathing became erratic. No. No. She looked at her own hands. The same hands that had ripped away his amulet. The same hands that had smashed his head into the coffee table. The same hands that had nearly broken his fingers. She suddenly slapped herself. Once. Twice. 3 times. The sharp cracks echoed through the hall. Stop. Dad grabbed her wrist. She violently shook him off. No. I deserve it. I called him a monster. I called my own brother a monster. She slapped herself again until blood appeared at the corner of her lips. Meanwhile, Dad slowly walked toward Henry. The proud, cold patriarch who had never bowed his head to anyone. Knelt. Right there. In front of every relative. His forehead hit the marble floor with a dull thud. I failed you. I wasn't worthy of being your father. Henry's eyes widened. For the first time since returning home. His father was kneeling before him. But instead of happiness. Years of grief, fear, loneliness, and longing surged through him all at once. He cried. Not quietly. Not elegantly. Like the frightened little 8-year-old boy who had nearly frozen to death in the river. I just wanted my family. Henry's cries echoed through the mansion. For a long moment, nobody dared to speak. The guests who had mocked him only moments ago lowered their heads one after another. The words they'd thrown at him. Monster. Venomous snake. He belongs back in the countryside. Now each one felt like a slap across their own faces. The oldest elder of the Shaw family suddenly raised the walking stick in his hand. Crack. The cane struck Dad squarely across the back. Dad didn't move. He remained kneeling. You disgrace. The old man was shaking with rage. I handed the Shaw family over to you because I believed you could distinguish right from wrong. But what have you done? You tortured your own flesh and blood for an outsider. He lifted the cane again. Crack. Another strike landed. I warned you a year ago. I told you not to favor one child so blindly. But you wouldn't listen. Dad's shoulders trembled. I deserve it. You deserve far worse. The old man turned sharply toward Violet. And you? Violet's face was deathly pale. She had never seen her grandfather this furious. You pride yourself on protecting your family. You call yourself a good sister. You even boasted that no one in this world would ever bully your younger brothers. His voice thundered through the hall. So tell me. Who bullied Henry the most? Violet's lips trembled. You. The old man pointed straight at her. It was you. You beat him. You humiliated him. You stripped the amulet your own mother climbed hundreds of steps to obtain from around his neck and handed it to the very person framing him. You looked into your own brother's eyes while he bled and called him an animal. Every accusation struck harder than a whip. Violet could no longer stand. She collapsed beside Dad. Grandpa. I didn't know. The old man laughed bitterly. You didn't know? When did ignorance become an excuse for cruelty? You didn't know because you never wanted to know. Violet burst into tears. For the first time in her life. She had no excuses left. The police finished placing handcuffs on Jackie. Seeing the Shaw family crumbling before his eyes, panic consumed him. No. He struggled desperately. They're still my family. They love me. They have to love me. His mouth betrayed him again. I only loved them because they were useful. I would have abandoned them the moment I inherited everything. Mom's head snapped up. Her face drained of all color. Inherited? Jackie's expression twisted in horror. No. No. His lips continued moving. I've already contacted a lawyer. I plan to convince Mom and Dad to transfer most of their shares to me after Grandpa retired. I also plan to send Henry overseas under the pretense of studying. So he'd never come back. Gasps filled the room. One uncle immediately shouted. So all of this was about the inheritance? Jackie screamed through clenched teeth. No. It wasn't only that. I hated him. I hated seeing Mom smile at him. I hated every birthday gift he received. I hated that stupid silver amulet. I wished he'd died with his adoptive father. The last sentence echoed through the mansion. Henry slowly lifted his head. His expression changed. Not to hatred. Not to rage. To heartbreak. Jackie had wanted him dead. Long before Henry had ever done anything. All because he existed. Before anyone could react. Smack. Mom slapped Jackie across the face with every ounce of strength she had. The sound was deafening. Jackie's head whipped to the side. A bright red handprint immediately appeared. He stared at her in disbelief. For years. She had never raised a hand against him. She was crying so hard she could barely breathe. You. My Henry. Her voice cracked. My child nearly died so many times because of you. And I held your hand while I let everyone hurt him. She let out a broken sob. I was his mother. But I protected the wrong child. Jackie reached toward her instinctively. Mom. Don't call me that. She shrieked so loudly every window in the room seemed to shake. You don't deserve to call me Mom. You stole my son from me while he was standing right in front of my eyes. I watched him bleed. I watched him shiver. I watched him beg with those eyes. And I never once reached for him. She clutched her chest as though it were being torn apart. Henry. I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for what I've done. All eyes turned to Henry. His face was wet with tears. His chest rose and fell unevenly. He looked at his mother. The woman he had dreamed about every night as a child. The woman whose embrace he had imagined would erase every scar. His lips trembled. He took one slow step toward her. Hope ignited in Mom's eyes. Then Henry stopped. His fingers tightened around the empty place on his neck where his silver amulet had once hung. His voice shook. You know. When Violet ripped my amulet away. It wasn't the silver that hurt. He looked at Mom. It was because you climbed those 399 steps for me. I thought. Even if nobody believed me. At least the person who climbed that mountain loved me. His tears fell silently. But when you watched her give it to Jackie. You didn't stop her. Mom covered her mouth. She remembered. She had watched. She had done nothing. Henry smiled through his tears, a fragile, aching smile that made everyone in the room feel their hearts clench. That was the moment. I realized. The mountain was real. The love. Wasn't. Mom let out a cry so anguished that even the police officers looked away, unable to bear witnessing a mother's heartbreaking under the weight of her own mistakes. Mom's scream seemed to tear through the entire mansion. She collapsed forward, clutching the marble floor so tightly that her fingernails snapped. No. No. I did love you. Henry's tears hadn't stopped. I know. Those two words made everyone look up. I know you loved me. Mom froze. Henry smiled sadly through his tears. That's why it hurt so much. If you had never loved me, I wouldn't have cared. His voice quivered. But you did. You found me. You held me. You promised no one would ever hurt me again. He looked straight at her. So when you were the one hurting me, it hurt more than anything my adoptive father ever did. Mom's pupils shook violently. Her breathing became ragged. Henry wasn't shouting. He wasn't cursing her. Every word was spoken with heartbreaking sincerity. That sincerity crushed her more completely than hatred ever could. She suddenly remembered that first night after bringing Henry home. He'd refused to sleep alone. He'd quietly carried his pillow outside his room and sat beside hers. When she'd opened the door, he'd looked up nervously. Can I sleep here? I'm scared you'll disappear when I wake up. She had laughed softly. She'd carried him into her room herself. That little boy had clung to her sleeve the entire night. Now. He wouldn't even let her touch him. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed uncontrollably. Dad remained kneeling. He slowly reached into his suit pocket. His fingers trembled so badly he almost dropped what he was holding. It was a faded photograph. The corners were worn from years of being carried around. Henry recognized it instantly. It was the only baby picture his parents had left of him before he'd been kidnapped. Dad stared at it for a long time before speaking. You know. When you disappeared. I carried this picture every day. I searched every city I could. I offered rewards. I hired investigators. I stopped celebrating birthdays. His voice cracked. Every year. I wondered whether my son had enough to eat. Whether he was cold. Whether someone was hurting him. His shoulders shook. And when I finally found you. He let out a bitter laugh filled with self-loathing. I became the person I was trying to save you from. The photograph slipped from his hand. It landed at Henry's feet. Henry slowly bent down and picked it up. In the picture. A baby wrapped in a blue blanket was smiling with two tiny teeth. Henry couldn't help smiling through his tears. I was ugly. Several relatives blinked. Dad stared at him. What? Henry sniffled. I looked like a potato. For the first time all day. A few tearful laughs escaped the relatives. Even Grandpa huffed through his nose. Dad looked at the picture again. You did. Mom burst into fresh tears. You absolutely did. Henry wiped his eyes. I can't believe nobody told me. The tiny moment of laughter disappeared almost as quickly as it came. Because everyone knew. It didn't erase anything. It only reminded them of the family they could have been. Just then. An officer hurried back inside carrying a small evidence bag. Detective. We found this in the suspect's bedroom. Inside the bag. Was a familiar silver amulet. There were several fresh scratches across it. Mom's eyes widened. My amulet. The officer nodded. It looks like someone tried to pry it open. The detective carefully opened the evidence bag. The back of the amulet had been forced apart. Hidden inside was a tiny folded piece of yellow paper. Everyone looked confused. Grandpa suddenly stood. Open it. The detective unfolded the paper with great care. His expression changed. There's writing. Mom immediately recognized the handwriting. It's the fortune teller's. Her voice trembled. When she'd climbed those 399 stone steps, the old fortune teller had insisted on placing something inside the amulet. He had smiled mysteriously and told her. Only open it if the child loses faith in his home. She had laughed back then. She never imagined that day would come. With trembling hands, the detective handed her the note. Mom unfolded it. The old ink had faded slightly. She read aloud through her tears. If this message is being read, then the child I prayed for has already suffered more than he should have. The amulet cannot protect him from misfortune. Only the hearts of his family can do that. If those hearts fail him, then do not ask the child to continue believing. Instead, ask yourselves whether you were worthy of the faith he placed in you. By the time she reached the last sentence, Mom could no longer read. The note slipped from her shaking fingers. No one spoke. Not even the police. Grandpa quietly picked up the yellow paper. He looked at his son. At his granddaughter. Then at Henry. His old eyes became red. The old man. He understood. He knew an amulet couldn't save a child. It was always the family that had to do that. He lowered his head in shame. And we failed. Jackie was shoved into the police car. I didn't mean to frame Henry. I mean, I did. I planned it for months. I even kept a notebook ranking which lies worked best. The detective frowned. A notebook? Jackie slapped both hands over his mouth. No. My bed. Under the third floorboard. The detective immediately ordered officers to search. 10 minutes later, an evidence box was carried downstairs. Inside was a thick black notebook. Every page was filled with dates. Lie number 14, break Mom's vase. Success. Henry punished. Lie number 21, hide Grandpa's medicine. Success. Henry kneels for 4 hours. Lie number 32, peanut allergy plan. Nearly perfect. Every successful lie had a smiling face drawn beside it. Grandpa's cane shattered against the floor. You kept records? Jackie's mouth continued against his will. I wanted to improve. The better the lie, the more fun watching Henry suffer. Violet suddenly screamed. That's fake. Jackie would never write something like that. Before anyone could stop her, she pointed at Henry. He's using some trick. Henry looked at her. You seem very certain. I am. Violet shouted. I've never made a mistake judging people. Henry sighed. Really? He spoke softly. Then from now on, you'll only be able to recognize the truth. Nothing happened. Violet laughed. Ridiculous. She spun toward one of the guests. Aunt Lily always supported our family. The moment she looked at the woman, words slipped out automatically. Aunt Lily only comes because she wants Grandpa's inheritance. The aunt's face froze. What? Violet slapped both hands over her mouth. No. She looked at another uncle. Uncle Ben is honest. Instead she blurted. Uncle Ben has had 3 secret girlfriends. The uncle's wife slowly turned to look at him. 3? He began sweating. The living room instantly descended into chaos. Henry blinked. Oops. For the first time all day. He looked genuinely embarrassed. I may have overdone that one. Grandpa actually barked out a laugh. Serves them right. Meanwhile Violet was spinning around in horror. She couldn't stop exposing everyone. Cousin Emma only pretends to like children. That painting is fake. The chef waters down the expensive wine. The gardener has been stealing fertilizer for years. One truth after another exploded through the mansion. Within minutes, 3 marriages were on the verge of collapse. 2 employees quit on the spot. 1 lawyer quietly slipped out the back door. The detective rubbed his temples. I've been on the force 27 years. I've never had a case solve itself. The detective pinched the bridge of his nose. Search every room. If Jackie's notebook is real, there are probably more surprises. Within minutes, officers spread throughout the Shaw mansion. One after another, voices rang out upstairs. Sir. We found forged signatures. Sir. Hidden phones. There's a safe behind the bookshelf. Every discovery made Jackie's face turn whiter. No. I forgot about those. The detective narrowed his eyes. You forgot? Jackie's mouth betrayed him yet again. I kept backup evidence in case I ever needed to blackmail Mom and Dad. The entire Shaw family froze. Blackmail? Mom whispered. Jackie squeezed his eyes shut. I recorded every argument. I secretly copied company documents. If they ever stopped loving me, I planned to threaten them. Dad staggered backward as if someone had punched him. The safe was dragged into the living room. After a locksmith forced it open, stacks of photographs spilled onto the floor. Every single one showed Henry. Henry sweeping broken glass. Henry kneeling in the rain. Henry eating alone in the backyard. Henry sleeping on the storeroom floor. There were hundreds of them. Grandpa frowned. Why would you keep these? Jackie's face twisted. I liked looking at them. I wanted to remember every time he lost. His own answer echoed through the hall. Even the police officer stared at him in disbelief. The detective quietly closed the evidence box. I've arrested murderers. I've arrested kidnappers. I've never met someone who treated another person's suffering like a collection. Just then, a lawyer rushed into the mansion. Chairman. He looked at Dad. The board just called. Dad frowned. What happened? The news is everywhere. He held up his phone. Jackie's confessions. The notebook. The police investigation. Someone at the banquet had live-streamed everything. Millions were already watching. The lawyer swallowed. The company's stock has started falling. Several directors are demanding an emergency meeting. Dad slowly closed his eyes. Everything he'd spent decades building was collapsing in one afternoon. Jackie panicked. No. The company can't fall. My shares. He slapped a hand over his mouth. Too late. The detective looked up sharply. Your shares? Jackie groaned. I forged transfer agreements. I already moved 5% into my own name. Dad's pupils shrank. You. I was going to take everything eventually. Dad looked at the son he'd protected for years. Then, without warning. Smack. His fist crashed across Jackie's face. The room fell silent. It was the first time he had ever struck Jackie. Jackie touched his swollen cheek in disbelief. Dad. Don't call me Dad. Dad's voice was terrifyingly calm. My son. He was the boy standing over there. He looked at Henry. The one I abandoned. The detective finally nodded. Take him. 2 officers began leading Jackie outside. Jackie struggled desperately. No. You can't. I'll change. I'll become a good person. Henry quietly looked at him. You really mean that? Jackie's eyes lit up. He nodded frantically. Yes. Henry smiled. Then I'll help you. Everyone turned toward him. Henry spoke one final sentence. From today onward, you will always do exactly what your conscience tells you. Nothing happened. Jackie laughed in relief. I knew your stupid curse. He froze. His legs suddenly turned around on their own. He walked straight toward the detective. I forged tax documents. I bribed witnesses. I framed classmates in middle school. I stole exam answers. I poisoned Grandpa's dog. I've hidden cash behind the ceiling in my apartment. I know where another fraud suspect is hiding. The detective's notebook was filling faster than he could write. One officer muttered. He's solving half our cold cases. Another officer coughed to hide a laugh. Jackie screamed internally while his mouth continued. I also cheated during my driving test. The detective blinked. We'll add that too. As the police car disappeared beyond the gates, the mansion became strangely quiet. Henry rubbed the back of his neck. So. He looked at Grandpa. I suppose I should go. Mom stumbled forward. Henry. He turned. She opened her mouth. But no words came. There was nothing she could promise that could erase the past. Henry smiled gently. I hope. He glanced at Dad and Violet. You treat the next person you love better than you treated me. No curse. No anger. Just a simple wish. It hurt far more than revenge. Grandpa suddenly called out. Henry. He walked over and carefully placed the silver amulet back into Henry's hand. It belongs to you. Henry looked at it for a long moment before fastening it around his neck again. This time. No one dared take it away. Grandpa sighed. Where will you go? Henry grinned. I've got a lot of life to make up for. I've never seen the ocean. I've never been on a train. I've never even had a proper birthday. He shrugged with a laugh. I think I'll start there. Grandpa's eyes reddened. Good. Live well. And if one day you decide to come back, this old man will always have a seat waiting for you. Henry smiled. I'll visit. But only as a guest. Then he waved once. Turned around. And walked through the gates. This time. No one stopped him. No one accused him. No one called him a monster. They could only watch as the boy they had finally found walked out of their lives by his own choice. Behind him, the Shaw family spent the rest of their lives living with a truth no curse could ever erase. The miracle they had searched 18 years to find had returned home. And they were the ones who threw it away.